People keep saying that movies aren't good anymore. We don't get any good movies anymore. And then they don't watch the good ones when they come out. Well, that was a movie. Hello and welcome back to Simon's Rants. I'm Simon, and today I'm giving my first thoughts on Bardo. What is the full title? False Chronicles of a Handful of Truths. It was written and directed by Alejandro G. Iñárritu, and it is maybe perfect? I hate in first thoughts saying a movie's a 10 out of 10 because it's my first thoughts, and I know I tend to overreact. When something's good, I want to say it's amazing, it's perfect. When something's bad, I want to say it's the worst movie ever, and I know I tend to do that, and I'm tempted to say this movie's a 10 out of 10. I really am, but I will say it's between an 8 and a 10. Because it's definitely no worse than an 8. It may not be perfect, I might be overreacting a little bit here, but it is at least an 8. This movie is phenomenal. Like I said, it's written and directed by Alejandro G. Iñárritu, and he's done many amazing movies before. My favorite being Birdman. That's when I first became aware of him, and even though I wasn't the biggest fan of The Revenant, I watched it and went, this is art. This is beautiful. It's one of the most beautiful movies I've ever seen. Obviously, also Birdman with the cinematography and the editing was amazing, and I feel the same way about this. It's one of the most beautiful movies I've ever seen. Just the shot direction, the composition of all the shots, the effects and their implementation, the imagery, the ideas being shown, and the editing with the camera work being hidden even though they should be in mirrors, they're not, and stuff. It's just so beautiful. It probably won't win Best Cinematography, but it should. One of the only few reasons that I would argue that this movie isn't perfect is that it is so strongly inspired to the point of possibly ripping off 8.5. If you haven't seen 8.5, it's pretty much the same movie, but from a long time ago. It's one of those really artsy, pretentious movies that most people don't like and don't get. So this is to that what like Joker was to the King of Comedy, where it's a remake done a long time later, stealing the majority of its ideas from that, with a sprinkling of, a different movie. With Joker, they took some from Taxi Driver. It was mainly King of Comedy, but there was a little bit of Taxi Driver, a little bit of other stuff in there. This is predominantly 8.5 with a little bit of like The Trial sprinkled in there. Once again though, great movies and great things to be inspired by, and inspiration isn't necessarily a bad thing. Just because you're taking ideas from things doesn't mean you're doing it badly, or doesn't mean you're doing a bad thing. And in this case, I like this more than 8.5. Don't kill me. Don't crucify me. I know you're not allowed to say that because 8.5 has something like a 95% on Metacritic. I think it's a great movie. I do. I'm not trying to say 8.5 is overrated. I'm trying to say Bardo might just be better. It was that good to me. And I know, this movie's kind of getting shit on, at least by critics. It's got like a 50-something%. It does have a 7 point something on IMDb, but on Metacritic it's 50-something%. People hate this movie, and I understand why. Because it is, one of those really artsy-fartsy movies that people are going to watch and immediately go, oh, this is pretentious, this is bullshit, this is just high art for the sake of it. It doesn't actually have any meaning, it's just trying to look deep, it's hashtag deep. The great thing is, though, halfway through the movie, which I'm sure a lot of critics were tapped out by this point, there's a scene where the main character, who is obviously the writer-director of this movie, it's the same thing as 8.5, that character isn't technically the real life person, but in every way is. There's a scene with a critic where he lays into him every reason why the movie sucks. He's like, it's way too long, it's pretentious, you're putting yourself as the main character, which is awful, it's unintentionally funny, or the rest of the time it bores you to tears. And it's like every negative thing you could have said about this movie, he says about himself already in it. You can't say anything that he doesn't already say about himself. And that was a scene, I was hooked from the first 5 minutes. And if you don't know if you like the movie or not from the first 5 minutes, then this probably isn't for you. Because if this movie's for you, you'll know right away that this movie's for you. But realistically, that was the point, though. Halfway through the movie when I was like, this movie might just be perfect. Because I was sitting there going, like, is this really as deep as it thinks it is? Is it just pretentious? Is it all these things? Sure, I like how it looks, and I think I like the messaging. It's kind of hard to tell what he's saying all the time, though. And then he said that, I was like, yeah, no, this movie's great. This movie's fantastic. And sure, I mean, there's a lot of things that I don't know that I understand about it, but I think I feel like I understand most of it, and it is a very deeply personal story. There have been a lot of those movies this year, and I've loved all of them. You know, like deeply personal stories told by these directors who are just trying to tell their story, and that's what this is. I mean, obviously the main character is directly inspired by the writer and director, and the things he goes through, although not always literal versions of what he's done, are heavily inspired by his life and at least his thoughts of his life. So I enjoyed it a lot, and like I said, I don't want to jump ahead of myself and say the movie's perfect, but I kind of want to say it. I'm not gonna, but I want to. And it's also one of those things where I know this movie isn't for everybody. If you've seen the movie 8.5 and went, man, that was a pretentious piece of shit, you'll say the same thing about this one. I guarantee it. And if you haven't seen that movie, or if you don't know what I'm talking about at all, there's a chance you'll like this. But, I mean, it takes a certain kind of person to like these kind of movies. And I feel like if you're that type of person, you probably already know about 8.5 or The Trial or stuff like that. So, I mean, give it a shot, but I'm warning you, this is for a very niche audience, which I get why it's getting mixed reviews, but I'm really disappointed in critics being so harsh on it, because it's like, do you not realize art when you see it? Like, what? You'll go ahead and you'll praise something like freaking Glass Onion, but you'll say that this is pretentious? Okay. I don't know. I don't want to get into spoilers or anything. I just want people to go see it. Like, I mean, it is long. It's over 2.5 hours. Apparently it used to be longer, and he cut out about 22 minutes of it. And I'm grateful for that, because if I had a secondary complaint, it would be that it's very long. Not only is it over 2.5 hours, but it feels like it. It's not a quick 2.5 hours. Like, it drags through parts. And so there's that nitpick, there's the copycat nitpick, and then a third nitpick is I do feel like at certain points it over-explains some things. Like, I love when they just don't explain anything. They just tell you what they want to say without any explanation, without any context, clues, or anything. They just say what they say and leave. That's kind of how 8.5 was. I don't feel like anything in 8.5 was explained at all. In this, they definitely explained more things. And I was kind of disappointed about that at first, but by the end of it, there was still a lot that was left unexplained. And there was a lot of room for interpretation, even with the things that were explained. So I wasn't mad about that at all, actually. So there's a couple of nitpicks. To me, I don't know if they matter. I really don't know. They're very subjective, tiny, itty-bitty little nitpicks. So, like I said, I could see myself rating it as low as an 8, but probably won't. I could see myself rating it as high as a 10, and I might. But it'll probably end up somewhere in the middle, because that's how it typically works. So just take it with a grain of salt, but go see it or watch it on Netflix, whatever you want to do, and just marvel at it, because if you're the type of person that will like this movie, it might just be your favorite movie of the year. It is that wild, that interesting, that crazy, that unique. I know I said it copied stuff, but despite copying stuff, it still was its own unique thing. The best way I can describe it was it felt like if 8.5 was directed by Michel Gondry. If that excites you, if that phrase, if that explanation, if that characterization of this movie excited you just now, then you're gonna love this movie. If you like Michel Gondry, if you like 8.5, you're like, oh my god, yeah, you should watch this movie. So I know that was short and sweet, but that's all I can really do. All I can really say about it is, wow. I'm glad I watched that. I was a little nervous. I had semi-high expectations because the concept sounded great and I knew I loved the director. But like I said, it has a 50-some% on Metacritic. I was like, yeah, maybe it is just a pretentious piece of shit. Maybe Iñárritu is past his prime and he's just, jerking himself off now. Like, that's all it is anymore. But to me, it wasn't that. It really wasn't. I felt like there was substance there. I'm going to be talking about it for weeks. I'm going to be thinking about it for even longer. This was a great experience, and I'm so glad I decided to watch it. I really, really am. And I hope you decide to watch it too. So that's what I had to think. What do you guys think, though? If you've seen it, let me know in the comments below. And of course, don't forget to like, share, and if you're new here, subscribe. Thanks, guys. Bye.